and welcome to Two Words Wolves Pod. I'm Ryan Eichten, and with me is Travis Singleton, the sneaker reporter. Travis, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm good. It's been a hectic morning, as I'm sure people don't need me to tell them, but I will. The Timberwolves traded Naz Reid and a whole bunch of draft capital, including their 2033 first-round pick, to the Charlotte Hornets for LaMelo Ball and Josh Green's more or less expiring contract. Yeah, we'll break it down. But I think first, just before we break down the LaMelo Ball aspect of it, let's talk about Naz Reid because
Yeah.
and I posted about it. He was probably the most, maybe setting Ant aside, the most beloved Timberwolves player of the past 5-6 years. The only guy that played basketball pre-pandemic for the Timberwolves still on the roster. So Ant and Jaden now are the longest tenured Timberwolves players. Ant has Jaden on that by what would have been a couple hours between those two picks. Yeah, I mean, just the towel nights, the tattoos, the billboards, just it's setting aside, which we'll break down the actual X's and O's of the trade and whether we like it or not. But even just setting aside, it's surreal to see Naz Reid go elsewhere, kind of similar to when Cat was traded, where in that trade, like, people liked it, people hated it. I don't remember my exact feelings back then, but certainly understood what they were trying to do. But it was a bummer seeing Cat leave, and I have similar feelings now watching Naz roll out the door. Just that he was as beloved as an athlete can be in a city. Really was. I don't know. I'd struggle to think of like current Minnesota sports athletes that were as beloved as Naz. I really can't think of one. And so that, to me, that's like the line item on this trade is no more Naz Reid in our lives.
Yeah. I mean, I've been here since 2022, and first player I gravitated towards was Nas, and he welcomed me open arms. He was like, "Hey, I like the sneaker stuff you're doing, different things like that." He was like, "I like the different angles you come with reporting," and for me, it was one of those where I'm watching somebody that's like beloved by a city that I don't think I've seen that much love in the city. I mean, Isaiah Thomas in Boston is close, but for me, Naz Reid, man, when you think of the Timberwolves, you think about Naz Reid. So it's gonna be weird to be able to see, the difference in the locker room and the different dynamics and everything. But we know it's a business, and one thing about business, you gotta make sure that you take the pleasure out of it and make sure you set that aside when you're talking about these things. But the impact on the community, spoke highly about Minnesota all the time. Even in free agency, doubled down on it like, hey, I can't leave them. I love Minnesota. So the turn of events, obviously somebody was gonna have to go, and but Nas's impact on this culture that was built, between him and Jaden, that's been special. The bond that they have, and just everything, honestly, that he brought to Minnesota, from a fan base perspective, like you said, the tattoos, I mean, the towel, I mean, there's so many different things that, the bobbleheads, I mean, the list goes on, for what he's brought to this community, and just the person he is, man. I appreciate him for always setting the time aside for us. Even after interviews are done, he talks to us, and definitely gonna miss those moments, and but like you said, man, it's a business, and we got to understand that wholeheartedly, the Timberwolves are making the best decision for the team and for the city, and yeah, it's tough, man. It's reminiscent of Cat for sure. um you're a Minnesotan, so I could totally understand where you coming from with the Cat and now with Nas, so definitely understand where you coming from, Ryan.
Yeah, and I posted about this on X. What Grady said during that Naz Reid Towel night 2 seasons ago was, as strong a love affair as one player can have with a fan base. And that's exactly what the relationship between Nas and the Wolves fans was. It was it was a love affair. It was Naz was the cult hero of this team. And really just thinking about his career in Minnesota, as good of a developmental success story as this franchise has ever had. An undrafted free agent, a slightly pudgy one at that, coming into the league. Coming out of high school and into LSU, I think he had more stock. Probably wanted to be a first round pick and didn't end up getting chosen. And the Wolves scooped him up and turned him into sixth man of the year. What seemed like for at least a few hours there, it seemed like Naz Reid was going to be the starting power forward for the Minnesota Timberwolves for years to come.
Yeah.
And we'll break down whether letting him go is the move to make, but it's not even to criticize them, but it is a business, and you understand, like, we all want to see the Wolves win at the championship level. And if that, I just think about the Knicks title, and I saw Knicks fans shouting out Dante DiVincenzo, Julius Randle, even guys like RJ Barrett, guys like that. Former guys that were on that team, and or even just guys way back when, Wally Zerbiak, of course, like Ewing and Starks.
Yeah.
And so I think about that, if the Wolves go on to win whatever, and they do, guys for the Wolves, guys like that will be Cat, maybe even like Wiggs, and Naz Reid certainly was up there. I saw Brandon Beck posted something like, if Naz would have been here another 5, 6, 7, 10 years, he would have had his jersey in the rafters, not the Raptors. So that's just from a fan angle. That's kind of the brutal part. Again, not to say they shouldn't have made the trade, but that's the reality of it, is that
Yeah.
this fan base lost a player that was really special to them.
For sure. I mean, Naz Reid's, you can't replace a Naz Reid, right? I mean, I've seen, I saw somebody on Twitter that said the only way that we're gonna embrace LaMelo is if he gets a Naz Reid tattoo. So it's people are just, at the end of the day, he made his impact on the franchise. And I mean, same thing. The New Jersey rollout, Naz Reid was a part of it. I mean, it's just, all of this is just too soon. And at the end of the day, it's you look at the impact he's had on the team, the culture, the fan base. I can't wait for the Hornets, or whatever team he's on next year, Hornets, whatever. Whenever he comes to Target Center for that first game.
Gosh.
That you want to talk about a roof exploding. I think Target Center might go upside down that night, because it's gonna be crazy. There's gonna be Naz Reid towels all over the place. There's gonna be, yeah, you name it. It's gonna be crazy. So just the impact on that. Like I said, IT in Boston was the closest I got, where I saw the fan base rally behind a player. Obviously it's reminiscence too, because like you said, Naz Reid came in kind of pudgy. Isaiah Thomas came to the Celtics, shortest player, one of the shortest players in the league. So they had that chip on their shoulder, and when the fan base embraced them, they just went to a whole nother stratosphere. So obviously IT had an MVP season, was an all-star. Naz Reid, sixth man of the year. So I love the development that the Timberwolves had with them, being patient, and it takes a lot to be patient with a player too. And the thing was, they got rewarded. So I'm saddened that he's leaving, for the Minnesota fans, but you gotta look straight ahead now. This is one of those championship type moves that you have to make, where it's we gotta hit a home run, and if we hit the home run, great. If we don't, at least we swung. It's better to take a chance than to not take a chance at all, and that's kind of how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, even just, I kind of bury the lead here. This podcast, the name of this podcast, 2 words, Naz Reid, 2 words, Wolves Pod, that. that
Yeah.
is from that, the cult status of the 2 words phrase. I don't know if we should just keep it going with this name or switch it, or I don't know. I haven't really for the off season, it's going to stay, cause I don't have time to figure out an alternative, but maybe I might have to change it. Maybe you keep it as it is. But yeah, that's who Naz was. And thinking about just bigger picture stuff, the way you win a title is getting players like Naz Reid, and obviously they've cashed in on his value at this point, but like just out of nowhere, like they did like to get Ant, you gave up, quote unquote, gave up, you spent a first round pick, the first overall pick that had theoretical value in and of itself. They could have traded down and honestly, they could have traded down and picked the player that they just traded for in LaMelo Ball.
Correct. Correct.
But even like almost any guy you get, I mean, even like, well, we can talk about Isaiah Evans later. Like they took a second rounder. They could have traded that second rounder and gotten XYZ. Nas, the price was nothing. Was a two-way slot and was a few $1,000,000 to start out. Like there was no cost, and so now they've added draft capital on top of Nas, but like they've added what the Wolves certainly hope is an all-star, all-NBA caliber player, basically out of thin air. And so obviously the Wolves have lost value along the way too with the Cat trade into the Randall salary dump. But they've also these are the type of things you have. I mean, I just think about Milwaukee, who obviously just traded Giannis. Like that front office and that they never found players like Naz Reid, and obviously Naz Reid is an outlier for any franchise. But like that's the type of stuff you need to do as a good organization is find diamonds in the rough, turn them into either quality players or assets that you can move. And obviously Naz was both of those things. And I guess we can dive into the actual X's and O's and the financials of the trade where the Wolves trade for LaMelo Ball. And I think this trade, even 12 months ago, I think would have been seen as what the hell are the Wolves doing? I think LaMelo's stock has greatly risen since over this last really just like 6 months since Charlotte kind of went on a huge run.
That win streak. Yep.
They were like as good of a team, just the results were as good as a team as anyone down the stretch of the year. And LaMelo Ball was a big part of that. He was relatively healthy for the first time since his sophomore year, really. The one time the Hornets had a good team was when LaMelo was healthy in the lineup, and I guess, I don't know, it's hard to tell. They were tanking in the middle, so I'm sure there was legitimate injuries in there too, but like, were they ever incentivized to like rush LaMelo back to the court to play? Not really. So that's a big part of it is the injuries, but from what's the reporting that's come out from like Krasinski and others is the Wolves are just ecstatic with the player they've gotten. And I do think that if the Wolves get the greater than 50th percentile outcome here for what they believe LaMelo is and can be, I think they've really hit a home run with this trade. So at least from the upside point of view, and obviously there's downsides, gigantic downsides as well. But I guess your initial thoughts on just the X's and O's of the trade.
Yeah, I think it's gonna open some things up for Rudy. He was the first person I thought of when the trade went down because everybody's saying he's gonna get he's gonna help Ant when Ant's doubled, and I respect that. But if you can get some easy buckets for Rudy, some lobs and different things like that he's used to back when he was with Utah and everything like that, I think that's where he's effective in that dunker spot when he gets the ball right away quick and put it up quick. So I think LaMelo will be able to get the ball to him and be able to help him be a better finisher when it comes to the lob presence, and then being able to play again play off of Anthony Edwards. I mean, that's going to be special in itself, man. I mean, the first initial thought, I mean, right when I saw it, I said, oh my God, like, because I'm just thinking, what are you going to do as a defense? Because you got two guys that can shoot the three, two guys that can create their own shots, two guys that can create for others, so you really can't double. So, I mean, this is going to be interesting to see. I love LaMelo, his game when he's on, he's on. You know what I'm saying? When he's with that 3-point shot, like he get it going, he can hit 3, 4, 5, 6 in a row. So I just think that it's truly going to be something special to watch. Defensively, I think they take a little bump because you obviously you get somebody smaller. You don't got the power forwards there now with Randall and Naz, but I think that the initial thought process was making sure that Ant has somebody that can bring the ball up, have the ball out of his hands, and get the ball to him in his sweet spots now. And I think that was the biggest thing that I was looking at was now Ant's gonna be freed up a lot more. And if you want a double Ant, then you're gonna have to deal with LaMelo and his dribbling playmaking ability. I mean, this guy, he could score and he could pass like the best of them. So just want to see a healthy LaMelo Ball and see what he can really do to unlock Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert for sure. And then obviously Jaden McDaniels got to take that next step too, like Finchie said. It's just more so just giving him more opportunity and being able to I want him to be more aggressive. I felt like he was a little bit too passive when it came to the San Antonio series. And just want him to be confident like he was against Denver. If you want to call people out, call them out. You know what I'm saying? Like if you want to go after people, go after them. So I think having LaMelo there, I think that he'll be able to catch him in the corner for the spot up three a little bit more. And that's what they need. They needed somebody that can bring the ball down with no pressure, know how to break down the defense, get to his spots, and be able to create when Ant goes out for a breather. Then there's no let off. Because now Lamelo's like, I can start cooking. I can start getting it going offensively. So I think this is a home run regardless. Only way it's not going to be a home run, in my opinion, is if there's a crazy one of those. But other than that, I think that Tim made the right decision. Like, so, you got to swing for the fences when it comes to these things, especially when you have a superstar like Anthony Edwards. You want to capitalize on his prime, and making a move like this, it helps extend that prime.
Yeah, and it sounds like that the Hornets did not want Rudy Gobert. They wanted Naz Reid, and so if the Wolves were unwilling to part with Naz Reid, this trade wouldn't have happened. So I think I think the Hornets probably made the right decision for them there, because I think for us, would we have rather parted with Rudy Gobert or Naz Reid from Minnesota's perspective? I think a lot of us would have said rather part with Rudy, just given Naz's contract is pretty nice for the next 4.5 seasons or 3.5 seasons, with the half being the player option at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not how it works. But I do think the fit between Rudy and LaMelo is, like you mentioned, like really ideal. I understand, and especially like the San Antonio series where Gobert did not perform as well as I think Gobert has had struggles in the playoffs against like really top tier quality teams, and to me that is as much or more about the fit with Randall than it was Gobert specifically, because we didn't see those struggles as nearly as much in the playoff series, the playoff run 2 years ago. Like, he was fine against Phoenix. Obviously, Phoenix didn't have a center to put on him or whatever. And Rudy was gigantic in beating Denver. Obviously, he didn't guard Jokic. They had Cat on or whatever. But like, even the Dallas series that year, that series was, to me, I know Luka hits the shot in game 2, but like, I thought that was not, that to me, in my opinion, that was not like a exposed Rudy Gobert series. And really, the playoffs that Rudy has looked brutal have been since they traded for Randall. And I think this roster just makes a whole lot more sense with Randall out of the way. And when they made that trade, and I did my own podcast here, and we've kind of talked about, we assumed that, just kind of listening to what was happening, we kind of assumed that like the Wolves are just going to sign the mid-level exception. That might all be all they do, and they sit under the luxury tax, they dodge the extra money. And in my opinion, if that was all they were going to do with the Randall salary dump, then I didn't like the move. Even if I don't like the fit with Randall, I think, like, if he's still a talented player, and at the very least, you could just move Randall to the bench and started Naz in that case. But now that they've made this trade, which is only possible with the Randall salary dump.
Yeah, correct.
Because they've aggregated, they're gonna fold this LaMelo trade into the Randall trade, so that basically the money they're sending out and coming in is more or less identical. So yeah, it's been a series of moves to get here, and like you talk about the upside versus downside. I think the main downside, LaMelo's been pretty brutal defensively. I think a lot of that is more mental than it is like physical or inability. But if it was physical or whatever, like, well, one, LaMelo is infamously 6'7", and the Wolves so like he should be a solid enough defender at that height and size, and the Wolves have Gobert and McDaniels, and also when he wants to, Edwards is a great defender. Like the Wolves have a solid defensive core around him. So even if your point guard isn't the best defender, you have ways to mitigate that. And it's unlike where it's like when Mike was struggling defensively, it's like just because he's 40 years old and a certain size, like you're just, that's not
Yeah,
what LaMelo's defensive deficiencies are. They're probably more similar to Ant's, where it's focus and offensive workload related. But
yeah.
what do you agree with me there? Like defensively, they have what they need to kind of paper over any potential defensive issues.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, what you're talking about reminds me of Steph Curry and the Warriors, like what they're doing, right? It's like you got a player that has a defensive deficiency, but you have some anchors around them, So you got Rudy Gobert, you got Jaden McDaniels. I mean, both of them defensively they lock up. We're talking about all defensive player type, every single year. So I think that's good. And like you said about Ant, I think Ant's a good defender. It's just more so I think it's one of those where if LaMelo if LaMelo's got it going, then Ant can be like, all right, I can lock up this person defensively because LaMelo got it going. You see what I'm saying? And vice versa. So I think what you're saying makes perfect sense. But like I said, it's one of those where you're gonna put some lineups together to help him out a little better. And I'm curious to see how he plays alongside Jaden McDaniels and even want to see the young guy, the new Slim, Isaiah get in there and be able to see what he does as well. But I think you were spot on with that. I think they have to string together a plan defensively where it doesn't look like he's a liability. And I think he'll be fine. But offensively, I think his offense is gonna, outweigh his defense for sure, and he's gonna make up for it regardless. I think with his playmaking ability, his energy, he still averaged like 1.2 steals per game, so he's getting deflections and different things. So I think he'll be able to affect the game a little bit more that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive into kind of some of the more negative aspects of of Lamelo. Uh,
Okay,
probably don't need to dive Freudian slip, dive into his driving habits, but um,
that's funny.
I think there's maybe a fair worry about like just his mental state as far on the court.
Yeah,
Just kind of a kind of an airhead. I think maybe that would be a fair representation, and maybe if it's, I hope that's not a fair representation, and that he can show us that's like unfair, and it that type of stuff spoke more about the Charlotte Hornets than it did LaMelo Ball. But I think the
yeah,
main worry is just like you're not, like it's tough to win a championship. Are you going to get the type of, is LaMelo Ball the type of player like through four straight playoff rounds where you get the night in night out like analytical stuff that you need to get to that the Wolves honestly haven't had up
yeah.
until this point. I do think that it's important that he's making less than Anthony Edwards, about 9 million a season moving forward. Um,
Okay.
so that helps. Like you're not, like when they were looking at Jaylen Brown, like that would have been a solid enough move too. But like Brown makes like 10 million more than LaMelo. That like in this case, like just like the Wolves wouldn't have been able to make that trade in this, like if they wanted to do Naz Reid plus picks for Jaylen Brown. One, I don't think Boston's doing that, but even
They're not.
setting that aside,
Yeah,
like financially that doesn't work. You're over the second apron, which is because the Wolves aggregated salaries in a trade, they are like they cannot go over the second apron. It's not an ownership money thing. It's a CBA's rule thing. So they would have had to attach Dante DiVincenzo to get the money to work. And I think the Wolves really wanted to keep Dante so they can re-sign him in the offseason. So I think that's important for LaMelo, but I guess I think it's fair to worry, like, is he like a championship caliber player? Not even, I think everyone knows he has the physical capabilities and the talent to do so. I just think it's like between the ears.
yeah,
Um and from what's come out about, like, the Wolves clearly believe that he can tighten up some of his deficiencies in that area. And so I got, like, it's certainly still something to watch, but at the very least you got to kind of got to give the Wolves the benefit of the doubt that they've done their due diligence in that area.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I totally agree with you. I think it's more so like you said, mental. It's one of those where IQ wise, like late in the game, is he gonna make the right decisions? You know, is he going to chuck the ball up? Like, you know what I'm saying? Those are some of the questions that you always have because that's what we saw with his version of himself with the Hornets, right? That was what he had to do because he was their offense, right? So I think coming into a different role, he's going to be able to. I think him and Ant will be able to play alongside each other where he'll be able to flourish in a better way where it's like, now he's playing free. There's no pressure. Like I think all the pressure is off of him now. Because now you're going to a different situation. You're free. You get to play freely. All you need to do is play make. Don't turn the ball over. Just make sure that you're making the right reads and being able to be a leader, one of those catalysts in the locker room. Just being a positive vibe in the locker room, a locker guy, teammate that you can depend on. So I think once he does those things, I think he'll be fine. But the thing is, this is going to be a new version of LaMelo. You're not the first option anymore. You're option number 2 now. So we don't know what type of version we're gonna get. But if we get the version in Charlotte, I'm not gonna be too happy about that. Down the stretch, he made a lot of bonehead mistakes and a lot of turnovers too, trying to be fancy with some of those passes and different things like that. But what we get now, I think, is somebody that's seasoned, somebody that has a peer with him, right? Because him and Ant are close in age, same draft class. You know what I'm saying? So now you have a peer with you, and you're like, you know what? Let's do this together. Like let's get that championship together. Every time the Hornets come this way, Ant's always joking with him and stuff like that. So they got some built up chemistry right there. And the thing that I do like about LaMelo, and nobody's really talking about this, he's been in the spotlight since he was a little kid. So the lights of none of this stuff gets to him. Went overseas. All of the attention's always been on him since he was a little kid because of his family. So coming into this situation, I think it's just gonna be the same thing. No pressure, just go out there, ball up. Play freely and flourish. Playmaking and being able to be assertive in those type of ways. So I truly believe that they're gonna be fine. I don't think it's gonna be the basketball aspect of it. I think it would be the mental. But I truly don't think he's walking into a situation where he has to overthink how he plays. I think that filling that void for like a Mike Conley and somebody, these that type of player, you're coming into something where we had Rob Dillingham last year, so I mean it's not gonna get as it's not gonna be like that, So I think, like I said, he's coming into a situation where he can be able to be free and he has Ant with him. And yeah, and I'm ready to see how they unlock this new version of LaMelo.
Yeah, I think it sounds like Bones and Mike are expected to be back. Parker Fox kind of reported that's on track to potentially happen on the minimums for each of them. I think having Mike in the locker room would be
Yeah,
especially good. For LaMelo, I don't know if they'd put their lockers next to each other because they like to space out. Kind of the people that we are more likely to talk to, they kind of try to spread them out. But like, I think having Mike work with LaMelo as much as possible would be really ideal. I don't know I don't know what Mike's quote unquote market would be like. I don't know what Mike's appetite to can I think I'm almost certain he wants to continue playing basketball, but does he want to continue with the Wolves where I would imagine the playing time, especially if they're bringing back Bones as well. I'd imagine the playing time is going to be slim to none.
yeah,
Obviously, injuries happen throughout the year, and they'll be more than happy to play Mike 15 minutes when on a whatever cold December night when they need someone. Um,
yeah,
but I think that would be, I think that would be really beneficial locker room wise to have the vet the vet of all vets for Lamelo.
yeah.
But offensively, I just think this is where it's really going to pay off most. If it does, is that,
Oh, for sure.
and especially for Anthony Edwards' game where they tried him at point guard last year and it worked. Like Ant had his best offensive season of his, well, I should maybe rephrase that. He had his best scoring season of his career. I think the playmaking kind of dipped off, and certainly the defense was pretty much just putrid from Ant this last season, at least in the regular season. And I think having him play more of his traditional shooting guard role, and you mentioned this, like the past couple years, teams were just doubling Ant
Hmm.
and they just didn't care about what was happening on the back end. They were daring the Wolves to like, okay, we'll throw to an Ant. Ant's going to have to get off the ball every single time, make the right play, and they dared him to make that play. And now you just can't do that. Like, if you do that, Ant will swing the ball to LaMelo and he'll get a wide open three. He'll get a lob. Like, you have another all-star caliber player on the other side of the court. And even thinking about like when the Wolves would double, or when the Nuggets would double the Wolves in that series before Dante got hurt. And the big shot in game 2 was just like they doubled him, Ant one pass away, swung it to Dante, who hit the big three.
Yep.
I mean, obviously they need him. They need and want LaMelo to do a whole lot more than that, but at the very least, that's a player that can do that, where it's just like, oh, they double LaMelo's one pass away, swing to him, wide open three. Beautiful. But if the other team does make the proper rotation on the back end, like, you now have a player that can attack the paint, can dish it out from there, get it back to Ant if the play gets you there. So I just think that's going to open up everything for Ant. He's already, I mean, Ant and LaMelo might be the best 3-point shooting backcourt in the league. Maybe like you want Steph Curry and whoever is their shooting guard as that, but like Ant and LaMelo are good as anyone. And the combination of, we all know this, Ant's 3-point game, the way he can attack the rim, and his kind of new mid-range shot from Ant is as 3-level scorers come, and the only way teams were able to the last couple of years slow him down was to throw extra defenders at him. And now the combination of having LaMelo out there as another guard to do that, and kind of the departure of Randall, I think really helped that, and I think it'll really help Rudy, especially not as much the addition of LaMelo, although that too. Just having Randall and Gobert fit just did not work. It flatly just didn't work. The fact that the Wolves won 3 playoff series in 2 seasons with that front court is impressive, because it just didn't work. I think teams around the league knew that it didn't work. And the Wolves kind of, with their talent and with how good Ant is and how good Gobert and Randall are individually, like, they were just able to brute force it. They were able to brute force wins in the playoffs. And now they can, like, the Wolves were more talented than certainly their regular season record show. Like, they were way more talented than the back-to-back 49-win seasons, but like that pairing and other factors like prevented them. Now, like, I don't know what, we don't need to really break down expectations when they still have extra moves to make.
Yeah.
Like, this is a 50-plus win team. This is a 55, and they, draft capital-wise, they are all in. It's not to say they don't have moves a year or two down the road, but they don't have a single first-round pick to trade, and next season, they'll only get access to an extra second-round pick. They're like 2034 second. Like, they are almost pretty much as all in gets in terms of draft capital. Now, you and I know they have young guys. I think they really like this Isaiah Evans kid. They love Johan Berenger. They believe in Terrence Shannon. So it's not like they're devoid of young talent. But ultimately, they do. They need, like, there's no more excuse this time. There's no more like, well, our guys are young. No, this team should win 50 plus games. I would argue closer to 55. They should be, maybe not, they don't have to be as good as Oklahoma City and San Antonio, but they need to be on that level.
I agree with you.
If they're not, then this was not the right trade to make. Not that it doesn't make them better, but like, then they should have held their draft capital and their Naz Reid value for something else. And so it's like, it's put up or shut up time. I know that's reductive and easy to say, but like, that's where the Wolves are at. And in 2 years, when they get access to another first round pick, but that's the other thing I want to say, is that it's the third straight time that Tim Connolly has traded every single first round pick available to him. 4 years ago, he obviously traded everything for Rudy. 2 years later, he traded the first round. Immediately, they got access to that 2031 pick, and he sent it out for Dillingham. And now 2 seasons later, he got access to the 2033 pick and sent it out. And so with the Dillingham one, obviously it's easy to play the result, but I was just, this LaMelo trade is why I didn't like the Dillingham trade even at the time, even when they had high hopes for him on the court. Was not because I care about whoever the Spurs and now the Kings pick with that selection. Like, it's more about the opportunity cost, and we saw that with Giannis. It sounded like they weren't going to trade Jaden, but they were never in that trade because they were missing this pick. If they had that second 2031 pick, maybe they would have been able to cobble together some some other trade that keeps Jaden out of it. Still doubt it, but like that, they were never close. The minute they decided not to trade Jaden, like they were never close to Giannis, and so this is the type of trade that makes a lot more sense. And in 2 years, if they need to rework stuff, they'll have another pick and they can make a similar type of trade. Who hell knows what the roster will look like at that point. Rudy will be a free agent if he picks up his player option the year before. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, but I guess what do you think about the quote unquote the all in aspect of this trade?
I mean, I like the all in aspect. I mean, your picks were already scarce from the Rudy trade, and then obviously, so but that just shows me that Tim's willing to go all in. He's willing to go all in. He's willing to try to hit the home run. He's swinging for the fences, and you could tell that he really wants to bring a championship to Minnesota. So, this is one of those plays where I'm like, okay, like I'm all in with you on this because you're getting an all-star back in return. With Dillingham, that was going to be a project. You know, with Rudy Gobert, you got an all-star, an all-defensive player. So I think fans are more accessible and appreciative of a move like this when you already know that the person has a proven track record. As in with Rob Dillingham, it was like, all right, we're going to start this track record with him. And you're going off of just what he did in college, but LaMelo's already put up numbers in the league, and same with Rudy. So I'm with the all in aspect. Obviously, like you said, 2033. I mean, that's a pretty long time, but at the end of the day, I mean, it just shows that he was serious and he wanted to get something done, and they were able to get it done, man. I think LaMelo's gonna really come here, and this is gonna be one of those where he comes in here and like the kids say, he's gonna turn up. So I think he's just gonna have positive vibes, and the locker room's gonna be lit, like the kids say, and everything like that. And he brings that different. He has his own cult following and fan base. You know what I'm saying? Because of his shoes and different things like that. Like he's the face of Puma. I mean, so like you're bringing a whole aspect and dynamic, to the Timberwolves market, and he's gonna be another fan favorite as well. With the kids as well. So I like what they did all in. Obviously, this is win or go home right now. You see what OKC and the Spurs have been doing around you, so you had to make something desperately, not a desperate move, but like you had to make a statement, and they at least made a statement. Obviously, you want to keep Naz, like you said earlier. Rudy was in the mix. You'd rather throw Rudy out there, but it just was what it was, and yeah, I'm gonna live with what Tim's doing. Let him cook.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, let's dive into some of the financial impact of this. So, like I mentioned earlier, they include this LaMelo Ball trade into the Julius Randle trade. So they're trading out from just the Wolves' perspective. They're trading out Julius Randle and Naz Reid, and they're getting back LaMelo Ball, and they're also getting back Josh Green, who is probably on a very overvalued, in expiring $14.7 million contract for this next season.
Hmm.
So that's now on the Wolves books. So in this season, that is a big contract that I don't know much about Josh Green, unfortunately, but I don't know if he plans to be in the Wolves in the Wolves rotation this year. If he's still on the roster, I would probably doubt it. He averaged 4.3 points per game, so probably a contract that the Hornets regret. And part of this,
Yeah,
the value of this trade for the Hornets was getting off of his number. And my guess would be now the Wolves try to do the same. The Wolves will shop Josh Green around, and not to think that they another team will necessarily want him at that number, but maybe in the Wolves can't. Unlike Julius, where they could have, like, they added a very small amount of draft capital to the Nets. Like, they don't really have that anymore. They don't have a second round pick to send with Josh Green, so the Wolves
yeah,
can get back a player. So I don't think they're going to be able to
yeah.
salary dump him, but I do think that, I don't know. We'll see what they're going to cook up. It doesn't sound like they want to trade Dante DiVincenzo's $12.5 million expiring, which would have maybe some value, where I think you probably could trade Dante just in and of itself and get back a player that'd be useful. I guess before I dive into that, I think it's important to note that the Wolves are now in the luxury tax fairly sizably. So right now they are They're just shy of $10 million over the tax. They'll have to add at least like $9 million in salary to fill out the roster. So there'll be $18 million into the tax. Let's see. Quick look up here of what that'll actually cost. So that'll
Okay.
cost the ownership about $32 million, that $18 million over the luxury tax. So all in all, like not a gigantic tax bill, not a cheap one either. They could decide to salary dump like midseason Dante DiVincenzo and try to get further under the whatever's. But I think, well, the other thing it does is now next offseason or next the 2027-28 season, the Wolves will be in the repeater tax. So what that means is if they're $16 million over the cap, instead of that costing them $30 million in luxury tax, that's going to cost them like 60, 70, $80 million. So this team's going to get expensive. It's going to get expensive real quick. And I like you mentioned, I was worried about them dodging the luxury tax this year. And maybe they were. Maybe if this LaMelo trade doesn't come together, maybe that was their plan. But ownership signed off on this. Ownership signed off on spending $30 million to keep this team together. They hopefully signed off on, at some level, being in the luxury tax next year and being a repeater team and costing them. I might get, if they are keeping Dante, I'd imagine that the idea would be to re-sign him at a favorable number. But like, the Wolves' books are still fine. They're gonna, for the next 2 seasons. The next big thing looking past the season is Rudy Gobert's a $38 million player option. A couple of avenues they could go with that. They could do what they did last time he had a player option and have him decline it and sign him to a longer term deal that gets him less money right away, and they can add salary. They could convince him to opt into it. Obviously, Rudy's going to do what's best for him with that player option. So a lot of angles, but I think it was important to note that the ownership did sign off on spending a whole lot more money. And I was someone that was worried about them being cheap. And at least on maybe the business side is not like they're cheap on that end. I don't know. But like at least on the player side, which is obviously what us covering the team care most about, on the player side, they're spending the money requisite to the level of team that they are.
Yeah, no, I agree. They went over the luxury. You know, they wanted to keep a team. That this let me know that they're serious about contending. You know, when you continue to make these type of moves, and you're like, all right, let's. Because I'm just like you. When I heard it was just Randall and then the salary dump, I'm like, what in the heck is going on here? Like, you know, because I'm wondering who they getting back. Are they getting anything back? And then they got nothing back, and I'm questioning. But sometimes, you know, we jump the gun, and they made a move, and they were able to tie Nas and Randall together to pop out LaMelo for us. You know, so I'm just glad that they're showing that they want to contend. They're showing that they're serious about contending. That's something that a lot of people that I talked to that, you know, are long time, you know, Timberwolves fans, they said that like, you know, we never spent money. We never spent money, you know? So the fact that they're able to do that now and trying to build around Ant, you know, it's letting me know that they're serious about contending for a championship, and they're serious about making sure that, you know, their superstar is completely happy with everything. And like you said, ownership had to sign off on it. Anthony Edwards had to sign off on it too. And they talked to him as well. So it's all about making everybody happy, and it seems like the Timberwolves were able to make everybody happy. The fan base is happy. With what obviously Naz Reid that hurt, but you get an all-star type caliber player like LaMelo. You can't turn that down at all.
Absolutely. And I guess last part of this trade that's important to talk about is what the Wolves do moving forward, because they've now traded their 2 power forwards on the roster.
Yeah.
So they are currently without a power forward. And I think obviously like Baron J could play some minutes there. Jaden McDaniels, I think, could be eligible to pick up some power forward minutes. But ultimately, to me, the goal of this rest of this offseason will be to fill out the power forward position, ideally a starting caliber player to slide in there that works with alongside Rudy specifically. Obviously, the pairing in the front court is most important. So, like I talked about, Josh Green's $14.7 million expiring contract. That could be an avenue to do that. The Wolves could, I believe you can use, so the Wolves have the taxpayer. If they could find a way to fully salary dump for free Josh Green, that'd be fantastic. I don't think that's possible. And the reason I don't think that's possible is because Charlotte would have just done it.
Yeah,
And like I said, if the Wolves had 2 second-round picks or whatever that they had free, and that could, I
that would
mean,
have been something. Yeah,
they could have done that.
yeah.
So I don't
Because
know. Again,
how much is
uh,
his contract this year?
14,679,000.
Yeah. I mean, I saw Josh when he was in Dallas. He looked good in Dallas. He had some moments this year, for Charlotte, but they definitely got to find a way to kind of to see if they can dump that for sure. To you got to bring in a starting caliber, like you said, starting caliber power forward, somebody that can play alongside Rudy, somebody that can defend. That's the biggest anchor of this team is defense. So you got to make sure that you can have somebody that can defend, but also be able to have a couple of post moves, to help out as well. Somebody like a Isaiah Stewart would have been nice. If I knew he was on a trading block, that would have been something that, could have saw what was gonna happen with that, or, anything's possible. But I think that I even saw John Collins thrown out there too earlier. So, there's possibilities, but they got the mid levels, so it's one of those where they have to get out there and do their due diligence, and they have to make sure that these free agency meetings actually matter, you know. And I would love for Ant to be like, hey, can I can I come in with you guys for the meeting, or like players like recruiting players. So
Yeah. And so I get the main issue is right this I don't know, let me we don't know what Isaiah Evans' contract will look like. It could be 1.3 million, could be 2.4, but without his contract on the books, the Wolves are just shy of $11 million under the second apron, which remember they're now barred from going above the second apron this year because of this trade.
yeah,
And they have at least 4 roster spots to fill. So they don't have a lot of with Josh Green's contract in the books, they don't have a lot of space. What they
yeah,
could do, I think they can do this, is if there was a team that, again, they're really thin on salary room, so they can't add. But if someone was making 16 million and wanted to save a couple million, you could swap Josh Green for that person making 16, 17 million,
mm,
and the Wolves could use an exception, I believe, to add that salary. Not exactly. I'm not 100% on that. But again, if someone is willing to salary dump the $16 million player, is that player really worth it for the Wolves? So it's kind of where I'm not exactly sure what the
yeah,
salary cap machinations are, besides just looking at Josh Green's contract as a very tradable contract, and Dante's would be too. But again, it sounds like they don't want to salary dump Dante. They would like
yeah,
to keep him, my guess, with the intention of signing him during the offseason, which the only way they could sign a player like Dante would be to have his bird rights like they do on the roster. So that's
yeah,
kind of the way. But yeah, some of the names I've heard, like PJ Washington, John Collins, I
yeah.
think Rui Hachimura is a
Rui's
free
another
agent
one.
all those guys would be great. I think Collins would probably be the least. I want a guy that doesn't have to be a sharpshooter, but like, I mean, we saw PJ Washington with Dallas just destroy the Wolves in that with 3 pointers,
Yeah,
like that type of player where can defend fours and can hit a three better than Julius can. So it's not such uh so that the player can play alongside Rudy, but it'll be a
yeah,
tight fit under the second aprons, but kind of that's really the last thing left this summer is figuring out how they don't really have. I know they have exception, but like I'm telling you, they're not going to really be able to make non minimum free agency signings. Just they could add like a single million on top of a vet minimum. Maybe that goes like Jalen Clark. Who knows if they have interest in bringing him back? I don't know. There's a lot of stuff to. I mean, if they're
yeah,
bringing back Mike and Bones at the minimum, and they're gonna opt into Julian Phillips' contract, there's only one open roster spot after that. So, yeah, I guess that's just the main thing is trying to find a starting power forward wherever you can.
Yeah, you got to definitely look. They got to choose wisely and make the right decision when it comes to that. But like you said, resources are really slim right now, so they got to try to make the best of it. I mean, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. But I know the fan base. They got a lot of questions. Everybody has a lot of questions, but I will say this though: Isaiah falling to the second round was a blessing for them because you don't have to open up the checkbook that much, because now salary is a lot lower. Obviously, he wanted to get drafted in the first round and acknowledge that. He was upset, but him falling to the second round, is going to help the Wolves out financially as well too. So that was another plus for them because we got a really good talent, and I definitely watched him at Duke as well. So one of those guys that yeah, I'm happy we got. I'm happy we got him for sure.
Yeah. Lastly, I guess just the Wolves took Isaiah Evans with the 33rd pick last night, which was in the Mike Conley trade. That pick went from 21 to 28 or 27, and then from 27 to 33 in the Julius Randle trade. But you were there last night, and they also took Trey Kaufman at the end of the second round.
Yeah,
But Evans specifically, I wasn't able to make it to the draft night coverage at the Wolves facility yesterday, but sounds like they really like Isaiah Evans, movement shooter type of guy, 6'6". The defense will probably be the where he either makes it or doesn't. That's true of pretty much every prospect, but it
yeah,
sounded like the Wolves were trying to get back into the second round or before the Julius trade. They were like Evans was on their board at the end of the first round, so to get him on in the second round where a salary type team like the Wolves can kind of salary control him better, that's a that's a huge get for them. So what did you think of Evans and what the Timberwolves had to say about him?
yeah. I thought it was very positive. Matt Lloyd came out there and talked to us. He said that they had their eyes set on Isaiah. Even before the trade. So they were trying to get him with that pick in the first round before they moved back. Definitely loved. They said that he was one of those players that you could just tell that he wants to win. Basketball is all he thinks about. Even when we talked to him on the phone, he was asked about his hobbies, and he was like, "All I do is play basketball." So, he's one of those players where he's just locked in, he's focused, brings some great length as well. Definitely need to see what he does on that defensive end. But you want to talk about a shooter, man? He's a scorer, and he can get hot real quick, and that's somebody that they're gonna definitely be leaning on that second unit. Excited to see what he does in the summer league. Excited to see what they have in plan for him, because I think him and Johan on that second unit will be nice, so just seeing what they could do. But yeah, they said that the Timberwolves, they had their eye on him for a while. They liked the fact that they were getting a player that came from a winning program, with Duke, and they already knew that he knew the pro system. Something that was really cool was, he was asked about playing next to Ant, and he's like, "Well, I played next to Cooper Flag and Cam Boozer, so he's like, I'm already used to the pro style, so I think it's gonna be fluid with him getting in there. One thing that he said he can't wait for, he said he can't wait to be able to learn from Jaden McDaniels and be able to be a sponge around him. So I think it's gonna be I think getting him was the pick. Like even when we were at 33 on the clock, I'm like, hey, they gotta go for Evans. So I'm glad they were able to do that. And yeah, made the best of it. And Timberwolves fans should be excited, man. They're gonna get somebody that's electric, somebody that's gonna come in there, head down, work hard, and yeah, somebody that's gonna really. I think he's really gonna bolster that second unit for them for sure.
Absolutely. That's where we're gonna wrap it up. Travis, you got anything to plug? What's going on with you this summer? Your coverage, or we just like all of us, we're waiting for the waiting for
Yeah,
the season to start. But I guess we got summer league in a couple
we
weeks
got
here.
summer league coming up. Yeah, summer league, and then obviously you want to see what happens free agency. You know, July 6th, everything's gonna start. Getting going and everything. So just looking forward to that. And being able to see what the Timberwolves have in store. But yeah, definitely keep it locked with sneakerreporter.com. Going to continue to cover what's going on, but then definitely going to be trying to get out to summer league as well so I could be on the ground for anything that happens. I'm waiting to see when they'll probably do LaMelo's introduction in Vegas. That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah, good
So
chance. It won't be. I'm out of town next week, and I had a brief like, oh crap, I'm gonna miss this thing. But they're not gonna have the LaMelo conference next week for sure because the trade can't go official until July
correct.
6th. So thankfully, I get bailed out there. I do my in-law trip to South Dakota does not ruin. I do not miss out on the press conference there. Maybe
Yeah,
miss out on the Isaiah Evans one if that happens, which you live with it. Um,
yeah.
does Lamelo have? I don't know stuff about. Does Lamelo have a shoe that all the 12-year-olds buy?
Yeah. So his shoe's been one of the hottest ones like on the market for a couple years now. So he's on the M05, so he's on his fifth shoe. So going into the season it'll be number 6. So I'm interested to see that. He has a like I said, them kids love his shoes, man. So they just buy them all up, man.
And
And
we're done with Big Baller Brand, right? That's in the
we're done
past.
with Big Baller Bread. Yeah, we're done. Hey, we're not done with LeVar though. He's gonna be in the building. You know that.
Yeah, he's been. I mean, we didn't talk about that angle of it because I think I haven't. I mean, I think whatever that was, I don't even know how to describe it. It seems like he's he's calmed down maybe, or like it's a more normal relationship between player and his kids organization, right? Seems like it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's a lot more calm now because before he would be like, "Hey, y'all need to be playing my son more and doing this and doing that." Now I think I can't wait to hear what he thinks about the trade because he's gonna be like, "Oh, I knew my son could do it. He just needed to go to a team that believed in him," and
Hmm.
yeah, he's gonna say all that. So I'm excited about that, and I just can't wait to see him and Ant on the court, man. That's gonna probably be that first preseason game when they're together on the court is gonna be that's gonna be insane too. So I'm excited, man, for what the Wolves are trying to do and the direction they're taking. It shows me that they're trying to contend and they're trying to stay relevant. And that's all you can ask for when it comes from ownership, GM. So they made the right move today. I know a lot of fans are hurting about Naz Reid, but to give any reassurance, you're getting an all star type caliber player with LaMelo, and you're getting somebody that's gonna be exciting to watch every single night. You're gonna see something every night where you're like, what the heck,
Is
So
that good or
I'm
bad?
looking forward to it. Well, it could be either way. It could go either way. But definitely looking forward to it. And like I said, man, keep it locked. Are you gonna be at Summer League?
Yep, I'll be out there.
Okay, cool. All right. So yeah, so that's the
So
plan, man.
we'll find some. No, Vegas is kind of the worst, but whatever. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
we'll
for
we'll
this
make it
pod,
happen, man.
absolutely. For this podcast, Leo and I will be back early next week. Um, we'll see what we have to talk about then. If there's no moves until then, there's still plenty more to talk about with this and potential future moves. But for Travis, I'm Ryan. Thank you everyone for listening. Go Wolves.
Ayoo!